Mr. Man on the Moon.
Where is that?
Ever since the first man mission to the moon in 1969, the
Ugh.
analysis of moon rocks has mostly debunked these theories. In 1975, the giant impact theory was reintroduced, and it describes the most
Good morning.
dramatic scenario. According to the theory, about 4.5
John, good morning.
a protoplanet similar in mass to Mars collided with the Earth. Nicknamed Theia after the mother of the moon goddess Selene in Greek mythology, the planet struck Earth like a cue ball.
Okay, we're live and feel free to start the meeting whenever.
Do we have a quorum? I can't see everyone. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay.
There's 14 people in total. That's what you're checking.
Hold on. There's 4 board members. I think we're good.
Good morning, Miranda. Folks, I just heard from Commissioner Barrett. He's going to log in a minute. And I'm looking to see if Reverend Cross is on. Shaheem, did you have an opportunity to connect with him?
I'm not even gonna lie to you, Phil. It completely escaped my mind. I'm gonna call him right now.
Please, because he's got to be connected.
Okay. Well, it looks like we have 5 members now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, 6. Okay.
So I can't even see if I'm live or not. We have a quorum, but for the public hearing part of our meeting, I think it would be good if Reverend Cross is formally the applicant.
Yes, we should give him a few minutes.
So let's give him an opportunity. We tried a couple ways to get him in and hooked up, but Shaheem hopefully is reaching out to him now. We'll see what we can do. He needs to be part of this. While we're waiting for Reverend Cross, commissioners, I'm just going to call out names and ask you to confirm that you're here, just to confirm a quorum. I believe we have a quorum in any case. Barrett?
Here.
Barry? I saw her. She just stepped away. Miranda, you're here. Hugh Biber? Hugh, are you here? Chip, I saw you. Just
I'm
say
here.
aye. Thank you. Philip Schwartz, I saw you. Please say aye. And John Schobel, I'm pretty sure I saw you.
I'm here. Hi there.
Okay. We have a quorum, so we're ready. I'm getting this weird YouTube screen. Okay. We have a quorum. We definitely can proceed, but City Attorney Polidoro, what do we do if we have trouble getting the applicant on?
So we may need to talk in attorney-client, but for now we can open the hearing and take comment. And then we'll have to decide whether we need to extend the hearing or provide for a written comment period in case the applicant didn't have proper notice.
My understanding, city attorney, is that several people had spoken to him. He was aware of the meeting. His concern was the technology.
Mhm.
We appear to have dropped the ball. I had asked Shaheen to get in touch with him, but we're trying to do that right now. If the applicant is not here, is there any objection if we start the public hearing and hear from the owner and her representative?
Objection from me or from public?
From
I
you.
think that's fine. I mean, the purpose of the hearing is for the board to take comment on the pending application. So you can certainly start taking those comments.
Appreciate that. Then I'd ask Victoria Milne and or Crystal to open up with whatever you wish to share with the board.
Victoria, do you want to go first on that?
Yeah, I can go ahead. I am a little bit concerned about not having Reverend Cross hear what I have to say because he's really the one I'm talking.
Victoria, do you want to wait then? I have no problem. It could be worthwhile. I'd prefer not to keep on extending this. We've been in open since February.
No, I need to move forward. So one way or another, I definitely.
I agree with that. So let's just sit for a bit and see if we can get in touch with Reverend Cross. I'm not sure I understand why he's not.
I just tried calling him and there's no answer.
Same.
Um,
5 billion years. But our time will come to an end way before then.
I'll be right back.
We haven't officially opened the hearing yet, right?
We have not. All I
Okay.
did so far is
I'll be back in a
we
moment.
have an agenda. Well, I'm sorry, a quorum.
Okay, I'm just gonna step out for 1 minute.
So, where it's not too hot, not too cold. It's just
Bill, I just tried calling again. It goes to his voicemail.
water. The key ingredient to sustain
Shaheem, are you on? Did you have any success?
No, I gave it about 3 tries. I couldn't reach him.
all water on the surface, oceans,
Um, Crystal, is there a reason I should go ahead or not? Do you have any thoughts for me?
Are there any other comments? We kind of wanted to take the end of this and sort of submit our comments at the end.
Not a problem. In that case, then the public hearing is now open. And
Do you want to wait for Victoria Palladino to come back?
yes, I didn't realize she dropped out. Let's wait. Paul Barrett, are you on?
I'm here.
You spoke to the Reverend when?
Yeah, yesterday morning, and I can, went through all the details with him about the meeting and how to get on Zoom. And he said he was going to have, I believe, his son assist him with this. And I did just try calling him twice. It goes to voicemail.
Okay. And we had posted all this stuff in the paper on the city website.
Oh, yes, he was aware it was at 9 o'clock.
Reverend Grant's on.
Reverend Williams, Pastor-elect is on.
Reverend Grant and Shiloh on.
I think he just said he's on.
Well, that's the Reverend of the Reverend Grant of the Shiloh.
Oh, I'm
Baptist.
sorry.
Okay.
Thank you, Paul.
or whatever that is. Victoria, are you back on?
I'm on, yeah.
All
Oh,
right, given our purpose here is to inform the commission on the proposed designation, is there any reason we can't proceed?
no, the board can certainly proceed with the hearing. I'm going to recommend that if Mr. Cross does not show up, that you leave it open for 5 or 7 days for additional written comment. And
I
that,
would object to that. This is, we're all here.
well, I'm
The-
giving
the
my
applicant
recommendation
was
to the board
aware?
at this point. So there may be issues because this is a new format for a lot of people. You know, if someone loses their internet connection, it is difficult. It's not the same as coming to a meeting at City Hall. There are some more hurdles for people to get over. So in light of that, I do recommend that you leave the hearing open for 5 or 7 days just for final written comments. It doesn't need to be another meeting of the board. And that,
Victoria, who would make that decision?
the board, you
As
guys would
a-
vote on it.
Okay, then we can do that. I think that folks then who have gone to the effort to join us and want to make public comment should be able to make public comment starting now. Shaheem, how do we?
I would
keep
just
this up?
object to that in that I think it's really important for the property owner to be able to follow up to all comments, whether they're written or verbal. And if we keep the
wherein
public
did we
hearing
say-
open only for written comments, she doesn't have the opportunity to respond to those. And
Well, so-
frankly, I don't think that that's fair to
Well,
her.
This hearing is for the property owner to provide her comments to the board. And so she would
But
have
I
the
also
extra
think,
5 to
Victoria, it's
5,
important
she
for
would
her to
have
be
the
able to
extra,
respond to any forthcoming comments.
she would have the extra 5 to 7 days to include her comments in the record as well. After that, the record is closing and the board's gonna,
I understand that, but if you keep it open for 7 days and on the 7th day comes a comment, she clearly doesn't have the opportunity to receive that and then respond.
well, just the same as if Reverend Cross wouldn't have the opportunity to respond to a comment from Ms. Milne received on day 7. I mean, it's equal in that sense.
But I'm just putting my objection on the record.
It's-
I have your objection. I'd like to proceed and hear from the folks who went to the trouble to attend this meeting. And as the owner had requested, or Crystal, as you'd requested, we can start with folks who were, I believe, here to advocate for the designation. Shaheem, how do you propose to filter people, or should we just call out names?
Just call out names and I'll unmute them.
Okay, I'm trying to see what the screen is. Ronald Kupnicki, I see your name up.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Can hear you clearly. Try to keep it to a couple minutes and go. Great.
In the gospel according to Matthew, Jesus praises, quote, the wise man who built his house upon a rock, and it fell not, for it was founded upon a rock. Chapter 7, verse 24. Later in the same gospel, he tells his disciple Simon, thou art Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church. Chapter 16, verse 18. In one interpretation, this foundational rock was not Peter himself, but Peter's declaration of faith in Jesus. Old Shiloh Baptist Church is literally built upon the land of Hudson, but it is also built upon the faith of that first congregation, who raised it with their own hands, and upon the faith of their successors. Hudson's historic preservation law, under which this commission operates, declares in its statement of purpose, chapter 169 or section 169-1, that the, quote, protection, enhancement, and perpetuation of landmarks and historic districts are necessary to promote the economic, cultural, educational, and general welfare of the public, inasmuch as the identity of a people is founded on its past, and inasmuch as the city of Hudson has many significant historic, architectural, and cultural resources which constitute heritage. It further states that it is intended to, quote, preserve and enhance the landmarks and historic districts which represent distinctive elements of Hudson's historic, architectural, and cultural heritage, end quote, and to, quote, foster civic pride in the accomplishments of the past, end quote. Old Shiloh Baptist Church fulfills these criteria for its designation and preservation, which would fulfill the purposes of Hudson's historic preservation law. Designation and preservation of Old Shiloh would construct, alongside the religious faith of its original congregation and their descendants, the foundation for another kind of faith, a civic faith. It would assure the community that government recognizes the community's historic, architectural, and cultural heritage as embodied in monuments like Old Shiloh Baptist Church. Upon the rock of this faith, you will build a better, fairer, more just, and more inclusive city of Hudson. Old Shiloh Baptist Church should be designated a landmark of Hudson. Thank you.
Thank you, Ronald. Sydney Long, I see you on the screen and you went to the trouble of sending in a letter to us. Would you like to comment? Unmute yourself.
Oh, how do I do that? Okay,
You did it.
I did it. You can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that Black history especially has been erased throughout our country. And there's a movement on now to recognize at least places where Black history took place. There was an article in the New York Times where they were visiting like industrial sites, which at one time had been where slaves were auctioned, but people were on tours of these places so they could see, at least have some feeling for what went on. We have in Old Shiloh not only a wonderful church, but also a Masonic lodge, both of which were so instrumental in keeping people, in giving our African-American community hope during some very dark times when they were excluded from much of society. So I think it's very important. And I would also like to know, without landmarks, my understanding is without landmark status, the present owner or a future owner could tear that edifice down and there would be nothing anyone can do about it. Is that true?
I wouldn't say nothing. People can object in any number of ways, but I would say that either individual designation or expanding the historic district to include Columbia Street, for example, would create a layer of protection for that building so that the owner or future owner would have to have cause such as a physical risk or level of deterioration. It's not a perfect system, but it certainly is a layer of protection that changes the game.
But the only way to make sure Old Shiloh is protected from being torn down is to grant it landmark status. Is that not true?
It's not absolutely certain that it might not be torn down if the building, for example, is allowed to become a danger to the community, but the real life answer is yes.
Okay, so I think that's very important to know. And then I'm a member of the tourism board, and I feel like as we expand, as we reimagine Hudson, as we re-enter a new era, that as we imagine it as a more inclusive city with a vibrant economy that extends to the streets on either side of Warren, it is hard to imagine a better engine for recovery and expansion than Old Shiloh. The granting of landmark status could in and of itself provide a public relations opportunity. The favorable press it could generate would not only be great for Hudson, but would certainly be a benefit to the new owner as well. So I think we have to look at a broader thing, and we have to see how attractive it could be for people to come to Hudson and see this church and realize its history. I think it's actually a missing element in our history that really needs to be recognized. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Sydney. Christabel Goff, I see your
Hello.
name. Did you want to
Yes,
speak?
Matt McGee.
No, Matt, I did not call you. Christabel, are you using Christabel's name?
No, I wanted to be sure you had my name because I'm on a phone.
That's very
I'm
helpful.
not on
I
the
called on
computer.
Matt.
Okay, so I
Hold on.
suggest that Shaheem update call-in user 1 to Matt's name, but in the meantime, we're going to hear from Christabel.
Oh, that's fine. I just wanted to be sure to be allowed on. Thank you.
You wouldn't be missed at all. We'll call, but Christabel, are you here? I don't see her anymore. All right, Matt, you're on.
Okay. Black people are part of the soul of America. Abiding the denial of their humanity and believing that we shall overcome, they have persevered. For some, this hope was their faith that the words of the Declaration of Independence and the preamble to the Constitution would come to include them. Above all, there was their Christian faith to carry them through adversity and injustice. Freedom came, and after a long century of endurance, their civil rights were protected. This last gain is still being consolidated today. Recognizing the cultural history of African Americans embodied in Old Shiloh Baptist Church through preservation is within the power of the city of Hudson and will give the site protections it deserves. Preservation of African American cultural sites is ongoing around the nation, and Hudson has yet to join in. This designation is a well-documented opportunity to go forward. And I just would like to add that thanks to the research efforts of Christabel Goff and Sydney Long, as well as the church history provided me with the blessings of Reverend Grant of the Shiloh Baptist Church, this is quite a complete record. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Carol, I see you were on. Did you want to speak? Not so much. Doug Hunting, I see your picture on the screen. Did you want to speak? Can you hear me? Doug Hunting?
You may need to unmute
No
yourself.
comments.
Okay. Chris McManus, did you want to speak?
Yes, hi. I wasn't planning to speak, but as I'm listening to this, I will put in a few comments very briefly. I'm also on the tourism board, and I am going to second what Sydney Long said. I think that during a time when we are trying to reimagine Hudson and trying to preserve everything that we have and have everything in our arsenal to present ourselves as an attractive city, I don't see any reason why we would do anything to risk losing a historic and important building in the city. So I would second what she said and would push for landmark status.
Thank you, Chris. Jesse Goldvarg, did you wish to speak in this meeting?
No comment.
Thank you. I see some just phone numbers up. I guess I can refer to the phone number and see if that person wants to speak.
Yes.
I have 518-822-9. I can't see anymore.
9686
Two.
518. There's 1-518-229-6862.
Yes. Did you wish to speak?
I heard it a little.
Can't hear you. 518.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Yes. And could you state your name, please?
Reverend Grant, Shiloh Baptist Church.
Reverend Grant, thank you very much for joining.
Yes. Am I on?
You're on.
Okay. We also have Reverend Alan Williams online. He is the pastor elect of Shiloh Baptist Church as I'm preparing to step down in my pastorate. But I've been here for 26 years. He has a little history also prior to that in Hudson. The property in question, as you refer to as the old Shiloh, I'm in agreement with the affirmative positions in that this piece of property, while it's no longer operated by Shiloh, it does maintain a vibrant history. As you recorded in your remarks, after Shiloh, it was then the Masonic Hall and then also another church, pastored by Reverend Ed Cross. It embodies the perception of history as I assume the Historical Society embraces. My position would be to give some serious consideration as to whether you want to just let something of this nature go. In the African American community, we have nothing that would maintain such a status as this particular building. The building in which we currently occupy on 14 Warren once belonged to, it was a Jewish synagogue, Asher Emet, which Shiloh bought back in the 70s. But even out of respect to its history, we still maintain the glass stains of the Star of Bethlehem David, as not to take away their history from that particular building, even though it is now a Baptist church. That same respect and consideration certainly would be appreciated to this end as you deliberate on the current possible longevity or the destruction of such a piece of property which would embody our history. I want to thank you for those who are standing up for this particular cause. Reverend Alan Williams is on also, if you wish to acknowledge him. He has some roots here prior to coming as my successor. He lived here, but that's my position as Reverend Grant, pastor of Shiloh Baptist Church. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Reverend Williams, if you're there, please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Reverend Alan Williams, pastor-elect. Thank you for this opportunity. I just think it's important to have a visible landmark in the community to acknowledge part of Hudson community members. As Pastor Grant said, I was born here in Hudson over 60 years ago, and I had the opportunity to worship in that very building on many occasions. So I think it would be beautiful if we could seize this opportunity to maintain this part of our history. That's it.
Thank you very much, Reverend Williams. Who wishes to speak? Who we have missed?
Do you want me to read the other phone numbers?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
So there's number 518-828-3133.
Can you hear me, Phil?
Yes.
This is Craig. That's the city code phone number.
Okay.
I have no comment. Good morning.
Terrific. What else?
Okay. The next number is 914-584-5373.
No, I have no comment.
Okay.
Okay.
The next number I see, or unless we covered this, is 646-509-4944.
Hello, this is Christabel Goss. Can you hear me?
Yes, very clearly, Christabel.
Oh, thank you. I've been having some technical problems. Excuse me. I did speak on this in the previous hearing. I would just like to add, we have an opportunity to recognize and honor a community of people of African descent whose forebears made their homes in Hudson more than 200 years ago. They built this building with their own hands as their church, and later it became their own Masonic lodge. I support landmark designation for this historic building. Thank you, Phil.
Thanks, Christabel. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak who has not had an opportunity to speak?
Oh, I hope to speak.
Of course, I was getting there. You guys had asked me to start with please go ahead. This is the owner, Victoria Milne, and please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. What I have to discuss with you today builds a little bit on my last presentation to you, in which I kind of just took the opportunity of being in the same room together to say hello. Since a lot of you weren't there then, I just want to reiterate that it has been rewarding and enriching to learn about the place of this building in the fabric of Hudson's history. And I am deeply sympathetic and interested with the opportunity to tell the story of the community around the building. And my interest in finding a way to accommodate that history is genuine, though I don't think that designation is the way to go. I can see the forces and patterns that have brought everyone here now on the subject. I am not happy to find myself owning a piece of another's community. I don't want to be that person, but I am. I come to this role in good faith with a sincere desire to recognize that history and to enrich the location with a recognition of its place in its earlier form in the community. I also need to register, though, that the way I have been treated as an owner in this process is not appropriate, it is not fair, and it is not welcoming. I feel that I have come in good faith and I have not been treated in good faith. I know that everyone's intentions are good, but the effect on me is not actually, I think, what you've intended. The approach of the landmarking committee, like every landmarking committee, is to take in and designate buildings as much as possible. And I know that your work and commitment over these years has led to a beautiful historic fabric of a beautiful town that I am eager to be a part of. And the approach of the former members of the church is very understandable. They want to retain a record of their story and their place in the community through the building. Everyone is coming to achieve something good. But I need to tell you about how this affects me, and I'm going to go over the elements of it that show you my situation. Under Hudson's, my first point has to do with hardship. Under Hudson's Preservation Code, there's an exception for preservation goals when they incur financial hardship, which is defined in part as reducing the income of the building. And Phil just referred to physical risk and level of decay as possible issues, right? This is already a very expensive building since it has not been maintained for years. I realize that members of the committee will say that preservation does not add expense, but every preservation committee in the country says that, and it's not true. As it stands now, the sky is visible through the back wall of the building. Many inches of solid vine growth are inside the walls. The decay that I plan to address in the building has been underway for decades. These are decades in which the prior owners and the city itself could have taken on the project of restoring the building. It was sold to me as a construction site with no working plumbing, no electricity, no gas, no insulation, a leaking roof. Virtually all that exists of the building is the shell visible from the street. And if you look from the alley, you can, that the shell is crumbling as it is. As a result of this condition, there are several financial impacts that constitute a hardship argument for me. I cannot get a mortgage on the building because I cannot get a certificate of occupancy on the building. And at the moment, I cannot obtain a construction permit to conduct the repairs that would move toward make these other things possible. My insurance is in the highest possible category, which is vacant building. I may not be able to get a construction loan or a commercial mortgage, but I may be able to, but they'll be at higher rates because it's a shell. I wrote this out before COVID. You all know COVID is affecting everyone every economy, every source of income. This hardship condition is only more real and not less real since COVID has happened. Buildings that have been designated landmarks have an extraordinary financial burden that this building cannot sustain. Additional costs related to preservation designation include potentially multiple meetings with associated legal and architectural fees to approve architectural external repairs, potential requirements to upgrade materials regardless of costs, additional time for moving forward with any and all exterior work. Your code has a negative impact on revenue as grounds for not conforming with landmarking guidance. Landmarking in this case will only deepen the already deep hole of this project long before any revenue can be earned back. I have attached with my submission several articles addressing the issue of added cost of landmarking of property. One concerns the Strand Bookstore in New York City, which would have been unable to continue operating had it been landmarked. Another describes how frequently landmark buildings across the country lie in disrepair because of the burden of obtaining additional approvals and building their committee standards. That's a New York Times article. The third is a personal finance blog that advises getting financing and insurance can be difficult because insurance companies may show reluctance to sell your home insurance policy.
Just do it. Just do it.
Based on the assumption that replacement costs are higher for designated historic homes. Hudson's home code describes hardship as a rationale against preservation activity. This building is indisputably a hardship case. It is falling apart, unmortgageable, and the sky is visible through the exposed ceiling. There's no working electricity, gas, or water. It is too late for designation. It is too late. So my second issue has to do with process. I am genuine in seeing that the motivations of everyone coming together on this issue are good. I understand that these are excellent values of everyone's side, but the resulting consequence for me is outrageous. The city of Hudson has had no problem in finding me for tax bills, but once there was a desire for people to come together to impose a very expensive restriction on the property I had bought, no one seemed to be able to find me. People somehow developed an unfounded, unresearched, unverified fear that the building would be demolished. Apparently, on the basis of this group fear, a request for historic designation was submitted with no outreach to me and with an incomplete form. The first I learned of the attempt of designation was when a friend mentioned a private individual blog, an opinion blog, not the city. However, the building had apparently been on the agenda of the Preservation Committee in early February with no notice to me. I received a certified letter as notice about 10 days before the last hearing in mid-February. I did not get a copy of the application until the morning of that hearing on February 28th. By the time that hearing happened, which is to say the first moment I saw the application, those seeking the designation had already rallied local political officials to their cause. The effect of this pattern of conduct is this. Local people have banded together to impose a cost on an outsider that they did not pay themselves when they had the opportunity. They have coordinated with each other, bent the rules to their favor, and left me to pay the cost. My third point has to do with prior negligence. The position is outrageous in light of the fact that both the community and the city have owned the building previously. When the community owned it, did they seek preservation designation? No. When the city owned it, did they seek preservation designation? No. In fact, in the hearing on February 28th, it was put in the record that the city would not designate it at that time because of the difficulty that would arise in selling the city property. On top of that, the building is many decades into neglect. It has decayed and decayed and decayed while owned by the city and the community. This is obvious from the old vines in the walls and the aged cracks by the plumbing. From my position, this is bait and switch. I bought a building that was not historically designated, and I would not have bought it if it were designated. While I realize that everyone working toward this is well-intentioned, The effect from my perspective is that you want me to pay for what you all refused to pay for when it was yours. The fact that the building has been in local hands all these decades has declined and decayed to a very bad state. And only now, when somebody from the outside hopes to revive the building, suddenly everyone cares and feels highly motivated to put the financial burden on an unknown person who was not present to represent herself. In effect, you have colluded against me in secret to achieve this goal. On that point, it is indisputable that the application that was submitted was not complete. However, the Preservation Committee scheduled a hearing anyway, which is only to be done once the application is complete. This is not legal. I have and I will pursue grounds to delegitimize the application if it comes to that. So to recap, I protest the designation on the grounds of hardship because the building is already too far gone and the preservation designation has unsustainable financial burden on a building that cannot produce revenue for a long time. And that is a basis in your code in the City of Hudson, and that applies here. I protest the designation on the grounds that both parties, community and city, owned the building and did not designate it and did not maintain the building. I protest the designation on the grounds that the legal process was not followed, I was not contacted, and the process was not even almost fair. Now, having said all this, I see how we ended up here. Maybe I was an unknown person and people love the building, rightly so. I love it too. And I understand that it's not crazy to be afraid that it might be torn down by somebody you don't know. I also am sincere in my appreciation of the building. I got involved with the building because I think it's beautiful and dignified, and this is a quality I want to preserve and celebrate. Sorry. Though it has played an important role in a community that has not been mine, I know from my own experience the importance of a church in a community, and that resonant meaning enriches the building. And I want to keep that, and I want to celebrate that. I want to look for ways of telling the story in the building's future life and to make this a positive neighborly relationship that connects people to what has happened in the location and who it was important to. I can see that the entire situation has arisen without malice, with people on all sides getting themselves excited about this idea. And I understand the values, I understand it. People are filled with an enthusiasm that's genuine and positive, but the execution of the plan and the impact of the plan are unfair to me. A positive alternative plan is something that I have suggested to Reverend Cross. Would it be possible for us to erect a plaque on the location to tell the site's history? Such a plaque could be written into the deed so that any future owner must maintain it. This would be a more effective tool than preservation designation, as it would tell the story and it would be more fair to me. We could have a ceremony when it's installed with the mayor and Honorable Delgado and journalists, and most importantly, the community. This would be a way to connect and create joy from this very difficult situation on my part. It would allow me to continue with my plans in a way that is consistent with the terms on which I entered this community. I hope you can consider it. If you do not, I will put the building on the market, and any preservation designation will make it harder to sell. Not conforming with the Preservation Commission in that circumstance is clearly supported by law, because there will be no opportunity to make money from a building that with that designation and about to be sold. It will therefore still be a hardship condition. And this is not in anyone's interest. I have the building because I appreciate it. The community has a love for the building because of their history and a story that deserves to be told. The Preservation Commission is interested in maintaining the historic fabric of the city. We achieve all of those goals by finding a way to move forward together. And for me, a plaque is a way to do that. Historic designation will not tell the story of the community, but a plaque will. Yeah, I just want to emphasize that COVID makes everything that I said here even more true. And I just want to close with an image of what I intend to do with the building, which is basically restore it, put in the new original windows, and try and bring it back to life with the dignity that it has in its existing structure. May I share my screen?
Go ahead.
Victoria, please go ahead.
Okay, I think.
It's up.
Okay, so can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. It's a little tricky to do this. I haven't done this before. So my intent is to put in the windows that one can see were initially part of the building, and to create an entrance on the bottom and an entrance on the top, to keep and reuse that sign from the Masonic Lodge, and basically to get back to the integrity and the wholeness of what the building has been, and to try and bring new life into the building and revive it. Let's see, I have a few other pictures here. These are the articles about the landmarking difficulty. I'll just submit those in writing. I don't need to tell you about them. I just wanted to mention that I was the New York contributing editor to Blueprint magazine in London for over 10 years. And I was the New York contributing editor to Dwell magazine. I'm on the NYC by Design Executive Committee, and I helped to plan the Design Festival in New York City every year for 6 years. And I spent over 10 years working at the New York City Department of Design and Construction. So architecture is something, and how to do a building and manage one is something that I'm quite familiar with. And I hope that if you decide not to designate it, that I hope to reassure you that the building will be as well cared for as I can possibly do. I did also want to show you a picture of how it is. This is the building as it stands now. I wanted to show you a picture from the interior. I'm not sure that I have that, but basically you can see through the building right now. The boards are falling off, the roof is falling through, everything is in a shambles. So I guess I just want to leave you with, how do I stop sharing? There we go. I just want to leave you with, I think I've made my case for my objection, but I want to leave you with a vision for a positive outcome that is mutually beneficial for everyone. I am going to restore the building as best I can. I want to bring it back to what I can see is original there. I cannot do it under designation, and I will sell it if it's designated. And, but I think that telling the story with a plaque that is permanent, that is deeded to the site, and that still fulfills the goals of the tourism board and the community by recognizing that role, I think that that's a really great win for everybody. And I hope that we could go that way. I want you to consider that. Thank you.
Chairman, may I ask a question?
Yes, attorney.
So, sorry. Sorry about that. Bad timing. So It's a two-part question, but the first thing I want to ask you is that this board meets monthly and you've presented plans to me, which, you know, I'm not an architect, but they appear to be a restoration of the facade. So what is it about the landmark process that you find will be such an economic hardship to you if you are intending to restore the building in any event? I don't understand what the economic hardship is.
Well, I just had it in my testimony. It's also in all of the articles that I've also submitted with my documents.
Well, that's New York City. You're taking examples from Manhattan. Right?
I can chime in on that.
Okay.
Victoria, something as simple as windows. A wood window that would replace what was there originally is much more expensive than a stock window that someone can buy from Marvin. A lot of things like that, when you have to use the same materials that were used, when you have to do as much as you can to restore the building to what it was, it can become incredibly onerous on the property owner in terms of expense.
And in addition to that, you have to wait for hearings. You have to have either a lawyer or an architect go to the hearings with you. Those are all added costs. I get billed for all of that.
May I comment? We're all talking in hypotheticals about what might happen. And hypotheticals are sometimes true and sometimes not. Would there be a path going forward to put the hypothetical to the test wherein your plans for restoration and the designation were linked and reviewed concurrently by the Preservation Commission?
If you designate this building,
No, they're linked. They go forward lockstep, for example.
If it is designated forever. You all may be an excellent oversight board. When you're all replaced by local mad tyrants, then owning the building is still subject to even more onerous processes of review and oversight. There is no language in your code that describes that delimits the purview of the Historic Preservation Commission.
I have another follow-up question, Chairman. The criteria for designation of a landmark is in the code, and it has to do with either possessing special character, historic or aesthetic interest, value as part of the cultural, political, economic community, identified with historic personages, or is the work of a builder, architect, or designer. That's the criteria that the board is supposed to be considering with whether or not this should be landmark. So I wanted to know if the applicant had any information for or against those criteria that you could provide the board with, supporting your position.
Can I comment?
Yeah.
Shouldn't that be in the application? I mean, isn't that the whole point of the application? Is it gives the board the information upon the basis upon which the application.
The board is evaluating the application. I was asking if in your opposition you wanted to present any evidence against those criteria.
Well, frankly, I'm not sure what the applicant has actually, what part of the code the applicant is pointing to. This application, other than the applicant's name.
The application had a supplemental submission that was appended to the application, which explained the criteria. So again, my question is, well, how do you want to address?
This does not say, the supplement does not indicate anything. I mean, it doesn't say, we don't even have on any of these documents that were submitted the tax map ID number, which is a requisite, it's required in the application. So
okay, again, I'm asking you to address the criteria if you have comments on 169-4A. That's my question.
Specifically spelled out in the application. You're asking us to infer that from an addendum to the application, you're asking us to infer what the applicant meant to apply for. because
Nope,
clearly.
It's
we
fine.
don't
If you don't have anything to add to that, that's fine. I just
do.
wanted.
I haven't spoken yet. I'm ready to speak if you all are ready.
And in answer to your question, Victoria,
Yes.
the part of the code that I am addressing is the hardship part of the code.
So the way that the code works is once something is designated as a landmark, there's certain criteria, there's a certain process for renovation, and then you can apply hardship criteria. But the hardship criteria is not relevant to whether or not something should be a landmark. And that's why I'm asking about the criteria for whether or not something should be a landmark specifically.
Okay, so I will speak. In terms of the application, I think that the board made a very big mistake in deeming it complete. I think that this sets a bad precedent, and I think it leaves the board open to exposure to a challenge. The application was brought forward under the sense that there was imminent threat of demolition to the property. At no time was code enforcement contacted to see if a building permit for demolition had been submitted. And at no time was the property owner contacted to see if there was any real threat that the building would be demolished. So rather than do any due diligence, the board accepted an application that clearly was not complete, decided to move forward with a public hearing, without doing, in my opinion, their proper due diligence. And frankly, without requiring that the applicant submit an application that was complete. I understand it was deemed complete, but as I just mentioned, there are requirements in the application, for instance, the tax map ID number, that are not included. So I think that this sets a bad precedent for the board, and I think it's exposes this application to a challenge. I'm sort of curious as to who the applicant really is. While Reverend Cross submitted an application, we're supplementing that with things that are clearly from other people. So I'm not quite sure who the applicant is. Phil, you said that someone on the board was doing some research on the property. My personal opinion is if any of that research has been presented, it's part of that application, because we can't look to the application to figure out what is being sought here, because it is so incomplete. So I think that if anyone has contributed to that on the board, they should recuse themselves, because I think that they are a de facto applicant. And the board, you cannot be a prosecutor and a judge. I think the board needs to consider.
I'll address it at the end, Chair.
I think that the board needs to consider that the applicant was also in control of the building and was a contributing factor to the condition of the property now. As Victoria said, this building, she took it over, she purchased it, and it was in really bad condition. That is not something that happened overnight. That is something that has been happening over the years, and not just years, but decades. It is unfair at this point for the same people that had control of the building to now try to force on another property owner something that they could have done themselves. I think most importantly here, what I'm hearing from the public, from the applicant, from members of the church, from our tourism board, this is about recognition of this place. This is about finding a way for people to find this building and experience it as it is part of the community. Historic designation does not seem to be the best way to affect that. The property owner has put forward that she's willing, provided that the historic designation status is not granted, she is willing to provide a deeded, i.e. forever, plaque to the property describing the cultural significance. That is something that people could actually go to, see, and read. That could actually be a tourism destination here in the city. I don't see that just through any sort of historic designation. The building itself is not so significant. If this is about culture, and I will say again, I think that the strongest way to preserve that cultural history is through a deeded plaque. That is, in my humble opinion, really the only way that the community can be connected. And when I say community, I don't mean just the local community, but the broader community, the community that we bring into Hudson, that we welcome, that supports our tax base and our restaurants. That plaque is the way to get there. And I encourage the board members to consider the property owner's position. She has, I think, made a very gracious offer here. And I do think that it is terribly unfair to force this designation on this property owner at this time.
Thank you.
Chairman, Reverend Cross is on now, but I do quickly want to address a comment made by Ms. Hines about recusal. The code clearly allows for the commission to do its own research and its own due diligence on an application. Board members are experts in this, and so it only makes sense. Specifically, section 169-4D states that the commission, owners and any interested parties may present testimony or documentary evidence. So there is no bar on the commission members doing their own research. It's encouraged. And if you didn't do it, you wouldn't be doing your own diligence.
Thank you. Reverend Cross, are you on?
He's muted.
Shaheen, could you unmute Reverend Cross? Are we able to connect? Reverend Cross?
Yes.
Did you wish to speak?
Hello, can you hear him?
No.
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 Okay. Hello?
He's frozen.
No? Still no?
Reverend Cross?
He's frozen.
Okay. While we work on that, are there folks who've not had an opportunity to speak who wish to speak?
Can you hear us?
Hello?
Yes. Who's speaking?
Hello? Oh, you can hear?
No.
Hello?
Oh, what?
Hi, Reverend.
Hello?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Hello?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm listening. I'm sorry I'm late. I'm just listening right now. Put any input at this time. I just want. Hello? Hello?
We can hear you, but you're going in and out.
No.
We can't hear you.
Maybe you should use the phone to call in.
Okay, this time, okay.
Sounds like we might have bad connection.
Is there any way Reverend Cross could call in? It looks like from what I just popped up on the screen that his bandwidth is low.
There's definitely a call-in number that Shaheen could provide him.
Phil, in the interim, could I ask a question?
Yes, who's speaking?
It's Sydney.
Sydney, thank you. I'm having I'm having trouble with my screen myself. I can't see anything except a big blue zoom, and
Can you-
I'd like to see you guys.
Okay. Okay. Hello?
Reverend Cross,
Yes.
please go ahead.
Okay. My phone's getting ready to shut off. Can you just get back to me? Keep me posted on the next meeting. I'll be talking. Hello? Gee, I'm not getting anything.
Okay. Shaheem, how do I return to my screen?
Yeah.
Should have a Zoom app open at the bottom of your screen. What kind of computer are you using?
Surface Pro. It's
Charge.
We can see and hear you, Phil.
Oh, you can.
Yeah,
I
we can see you.
hear you guys, which will be rough when pages come up. What are the thoughts from my colleagues on this? Reverend Cross can certainly deliver written testimony. We can figure out a way to do that. If we need to, we can record him. But I would like to cover off this part of our public discussion. The commission can vote to extend a reasonable period, let's say another 5 days, to get a written comment from the Reverend, or someone can record him. But I prefer not to keep this going if we're not progressing anything.
Bill, could I just ask a question, a quick
Did you
question?
go ahead?
Okay, it seems like the stumbling block for Victoria, for the owner, is the expense that landmark designation would incur. Is there any way that landmark designation can minimize that expense? Is that possible if she applies for hardship?
What I had tried to raise about the issue of hypothetical is I don't agree with a lot of those premises. I've been doing this for almost 10 years. So I understand that there are all kinds of benchmarks in this world. I used to be in the benchmark business. What I was hoping would be that we could work together going forward, combining what the owner would like to see in terms of restoration, and I think the community would like to see with the designation. But if the other path forward is we create the designation, either the owner goes forward and proposes hardship, which is totally legit in the code, can be taken to the city council, or someone else purchases and challenges on a hardship basis as well. But it's hard to do any of this without something a bit more concrete. So I feel a little bit stymied.
What do you mean more concrete? What are you referring to?
To the degree that the owner would be willing to put forward a more specific construction, restoration, or even repair plan, would allow HPC to participate in another way if the owner was willing to submit it. If the owner is not willing to submit a plan, then it'll go however it goes, and we'll review the designation in absence of a vision going forward, I think, or the plaque or whatever. I just thought that from the plans that were
Seems to me that
presented,
you either have oversight, which incurs expense to me, and questioning that is really kind of outrageous. It's well known worldwide, nationwide, large communities, small communities, historic preservation designation is expensive. My citations are not just New York, they're from all over the country.
I understand what you're saying.
What the chairman is recommending, just so we understand what he's recommending, is that you submit your proposal for restoration, which can be reviewed by the planning board, even though, I mean, the HPC, even though they don't have jurisdiction at this point to do a review. And then once they designate, they could approve your restoration plan, so that it would be kind of a 1-2 situation, and there's no more delay. You don't have to come back again. So while you're before the the board now doing this, they could be doing an informal review of your plan, then they designate, then they approve your plan, assuming it's approvable, and life goes on. That's what the chairman is getting at. He's offering you a path.
Life does not ever go on. You have oversight. Either you have oversight and I have expense, or you don't have oversight and I can move forward.
Okay, I'm sorry, but expense is not an issue before this board right now. Right now, the issue is whether or not the building meets the criteria for designation, and that's what the board is considering.
Expense is an
And
issue.
There's always oversight. There's always planning board approval, zoning board approval. I mean, you never can do something without any oversight in any event. So
I'm clearly aware that there's oversight, and I anticipate it, and I'm eager to conform to the codes of the city of Hudson. Once there is oversight of historic preservation, there is never not oversight of historic preservation. And as I said before, I will sell the building, it will fall into further disrepair, and it may not sell. It's just not in anyone's interest. That's not what any of us are here for.
Understood, Victoria. You've been clear.
Okay.
So I don't want everybody to engage in a colloquy now. We need to move on and go on to other business. The purpose of the meeting was absolutely to hear from you, Victoria, the owner, and from Crystal, and for other folks who wanted to speak out. Does anyone feel that they've been excluded or didn't have an opportunity to speak? If no one shouts out, then
Hello?
I'd like to close. Yes, who's speaking?
Reverend Cross.
Oh, great.
Go ahead, Reverend.
Okay, I'm here just listening. My phone is getting ready to go off, but I'm here just listening. And I would like to talk to Victoria. I had talked to her, and where I'm at is that it's not up to me, as I said, it's up to the community, okay? And as far as we can get working together is where I want to go. You know, the need is for the place to be recognized as a historical site. Hello?
we hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry. The ingenuity of mankind, I don't know. But where I'm at is, what can we do to the building or with the building that the community owns it as a historical site? How far can we go? How far can the owner go? What is going to be acceptable? And I'm not the one to accept it. It's the community. I have been walking through the community, and I've been getting ideas about what to do. I heard Victoria and I had some talk, and where she was going, we were headed in the right direction. Hello.
Yes, you're heard clearly, Reverend.
Yeah.
Okay, we were headed in the right direction. I've heard some other things, and I don't know. My mind is saying, let's see if we can put these things together. I don't want this woman to wind up being broke by having something that turns it into something too expensive, you know, and that we lose the building. But I do want the recognition.
Reverend?
Yes, sir.
This is Chairman Phil. Are you interested, for example, in working with the owner on a shared solution and withdrawing the application?
Ooh.
Boy. Yes. Yes, right at this present time. But I do not want to drop the application that we just away. And no guarantee I can have right now is, Victoria, your word with the rest of the people that are there. Hello?
Hey, Reverend, I think.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
what-
ma'am.
what strengthens the idea of us working together on a plaque is the idea of putting it on the deed. And then it becomes attached to the building, and that's enforced by the city forever. And the requirement to tell the story of your church is connected to any landowner of this.
Okay, ma'am, I want you to give us
We can't hear you, Reverend.
my church and your churches. Yeah, I told you, it's just churches, that build is just a building. Our churches are people who have been involved in it. So what I envision is being able to walk up and see that church and say, that represents the work that we had 100 years ago that's brought us to now. And if there's any way we can do that, God bless us all.
So to be clear, a private deed restriction amongst the parties, if they work that out, that's fine, but that would not be enforceable by the city, nor would it prevent demolition. So that, just so everyone understands.
Thank you. That's the problem. I feel like
So Chairman, we're at a point where you need to decide whether you want to close the hearing and keep it open for 10 days to allow comments from the commissioners that are doing their research to get into the record, whether you want to continue the hearing to another live hearing in 2 weeks, or whether you want to just close it. Once it's closed, the board has to act within 30 days.
I understand that. At this point, I would be interested in closing this hearing. I don't think we need another live hearing. I would like everything that the owner presented and her representative presented in writing, so that goes into our records. I would hope that the conversation continues between the owner and Reverend Cross, and perhaps between the two of them, they come back with additional thoughts. Otherwise, the commission will go ahead and do its work. Will accept, as you say, let's say 10 days of written comment. And I will schedule a point in time where the commission deliberates and votes. So that's where I am.
So you'd need a motion to close the hearing and extend written comment period for 10 days.
That's the motion. Commissioners, are you all on board? Can I have a second?
I'll second that.
Commissioners, I'm going to.
I think I'm unmuted now. I second that motion.
Thank you. I'm just going to do a quick roll call. Just state aye or nay. Barrett.
Aye.
Barry.
Aye.
Biber. Bull.
Aye.
Schwartz.
Aye.
Schobel.
Aye.
Foreman. Aye. Public hearing is closed.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria.
Does anyone need, other than me, maybe a 5-minute break?
Sure.
I'll
Yes.
frame it.
Sure.
Yes.
I'm taking a 5-minute break.
Aye.
Okay.
I will see you all. Let's be generous and make it a few more. Everybody back, say, I've got 10:26 at 10:30 sharp.
Okay.
Thanks all.
Okay.
Shaheem, if you can hear me, could you put the agenda screen back up? Thanks very much. Commissioners, I want to check if everybody is back up. I'm going to do a quick roll call. And call to order our regular meeting. Try one more time. If the commissioners could come back on, please. John, I see you. Thank you.
Chip,
Philip, Miranda. Chip,
I'm here.
come back on.
I'm here.
Thanks, Miranda.
Miranda, yes, I just was muted.
No, I see you. All right, let me just do a quick check, see if we've got everybody back on, and then we will call to order our regular meeting and our regular order of business. Barrett,
Here.
Barry,
Here,
Bowl,
Here.
Schwartz. Philip, are you there? Schobel, I saw you, John. We do have a quorum. I'm assuming Philip will be back on shortly. I'd like to go ahead then with our regular order of business as per the agenda. We have 2 certificate of appropriateness votes from applications that were presented in prior meeting. Is anyone here to represent 461 East Allen? Doesn't matter, we still can go ahead and vote. Is anyone here from 502 Union Street? Let me comment on each of these. 461 East Allen. Turn off the phone. 461 East Allen was approved by the commission. A public hearing was waived and the city attorney prepared a certificate of appropriateness. There were no contingencies. 502 Union had several contingencies. Signature on the application, which we did receive, but also questions were raised regarding plans for the fire stairs. And there were some issues proposed and discussed around the fenestration. It's my view that we can't really go forward with 502 Union if the applicant is not here to address contingencies, and nothing was submitted that I've seen on the contingencies prior to the meeting. So I would ask for a vote on 461 East Allen, which application was approved in our previous meeting without contingencies. I'll do a roll call vote on 461 East Allen. Barrett?
Aye.
Barry?
aye.
Bowl?
Aye.
Schwartz?
Aye.
Schobel?
Aye.
Foreman, aye. 461 East Allen is approved. and a certificate of appropriateness will be provided to the applicant. 502 Union, we need to get the applicant back to make sure that we're communicating correctly with one another regarding the contingencies and that those have been addressed.
Mr. Chairman, this is Chad Lindberg with the applicant. We noticed that we were pushed to June 12th for the CA vote, so we're still advancing the rear elevations as requested. So we'll submit those and be ready for that point for conversation.
Thank you. And just a comment here. I didn't write that to be discouraging. I meant it as a reminder to make sure that you are on the agenda, that we look forward to receiving the additional materials and so on. It was not meant as a negative.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for coming to this meeting. Certificate of appropriateness applications. First up is a sign for 60 South Front Street. Shaheen, I'm wondering,
To continue 502 Union, or we just don't vote on it?
we don't vote on it at this time. It's understood that that we're waiting for contingencies to be resolved.
Okay.
This is a sign at 60 South Front Street. And I had a dickens of a time finding it because my computer had chosen it to file it under Kitty. So each time I looked for the sign, all I found was Kitty, and I thought, well, that can't be it, but that is it. Is someone here from 60 South Front Street to present this sign application? As no one is here, without the applicant to present, we can't go forward, so we'll move on. Shaheen, if you'd go back to the agenda. Next two applications were incomplete, and also we were waiting for additional information. Just to refresh everyone's recollection, I think on 602 Columbia, we were talking about window materials and fenestration. And there was a small structure that was proposed, 34 South Front Street, and we were waiting for elevations or some more detailed descriptions. Since nothing was received between the two meetings on either of those applications, they will both be moved to June 12th. Yes.
Bill, one question regarding 602 Columbia Street.
Yes.
You had suggested to them by invitation that they could contact me if they wanted to have some discussion about the windows.
I absolutely did.
And I've not heard from them. So I just wanted to report that I've not heard from them.
Okay, no, I appreciate that, Chip, and I appreciate your offering to work with them. I skipped one item, I'm sorry, on the agenda. We've been missing our target in terms of timely approval of minutes. Everyone should have received on the commission the minutes that Aaron kindly prepared for the meeting of May 8th. I'd like a motion then to approve the minutes from the meeting of May 8th. Anyone?
I make that motion.
And a second. Thanks, Paul. And a second, please.
I'll second.
Thank you so much. We know who's here. We've checked in with everybody, so a voice vote is sufficient. We know that everyone is here except for Commissioner Biber. All in favor, yell aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No opposed. The minutes are approved and can be posted. And thank you as always, Aaron. Next up is 356 Union Street. Is anyone here representing 356 Union? Anyone at all? If not, we'll pass. Next up is 620 Union Street. Is anyone here representing 620 Union?
Yes.
Terrific. Who's speaking?
This is Mike Finney. I believe David Kessler is also on the line.
Oh, terrific. Thank you guys for coming to the meeting. I know the electronic and virus stuff makes life a little complicated. I appreciate your getting on this.
Sure. No, it's, we appreciate the opportunity, so thank you.
Please go ahead with your application.
Sure. Is David there?
Yes, I'm here. I'd like to start off with a brief introduction, if I may. I wanted to introduce myself and the project. My name is David Kessler. I'm the developer. I'm originally from Atlanta, and I've lived in New York since 2002, and I recently relocated permanently to Hudson. And I look forward to getting to know you all and contributing to the community. I've worked in real estate my entire career. I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit and wanted to do my own thing, so finally took the plunge and started my own company. And I've been looking for a project of a certain size and scale where I could take a historic gym that's currently vacant and dilapidated and redevelop it to make it viable again. When I first came to Hudson, I fell in love with the town. For many of the same reasons I speculate many of you love it. Love it for its diversity, history, culture, and charm. When I first saw 620 Union, I knew this was, I wanted to launch my new business. I knew this is where I wanted to live. After studying the market extensively, we created a business plan to redevelop this historic property into an independent boutique hotel with 50 rooms, a restaurant and bar, and other hotel amenities that would be large enough to be economically viable, but small enough to fit into Hudson's ethos of smaller is beautiful. We want the property to be locally rooted and art and history focused, engaging the local artists and historians to help curate experiences for our guests. We also intend to have excellent food and drinks at an accessible price point that will cater to both tourists and locals alike. I was attracted to Hudson and this project because I value many of the same things that you do. Since I wanted to focus my efforts on historic preservation, it was critical to come up with a streetscape that respects the historic facade, restores and preserves the garden, and saves the 2 large growth trees. The building located at 620 Union was built in 1835 as the private home and boarding house for Robert and Sally McKinstry. Robert died in 1870 and the building sat vacant during the estate dispute, which lasted until 1895 when the Home for the Aged purchased the building. The Home for the Aged added an addition in 1906, and during the last 100 years, the facade was bastardized in several areas, and we want to bring it back to its original glory. The property has been sitting vacant since 2014. I'm extremely excited about this project and look forward to working with you all. Now I'd like to hand it off to Mike Finney, my architect of record.
Thank you for that. And if you need us to move to another document or another, the young man who's supporting us and doing a great job with a bit of the technology is Shaheem. He is online and you can ask for help at any time. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. This is Mike Finney. I think if I could be allowed to share my screen, I can walk you through some drawings.
I see it.
Everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Hey, you can see my cursor?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, great. Like I said, my name is Mike Finney. I'm principal of Finney Design Group. We're a multidisciplinary design firm. We have offices in Troy and Saratoga Springs. We have quite extensive experience in boutique hospitality, particularly historic conversions. And we're really honored to be working in your community, and we think this is a gem of a property. So to get into it a little bit, just to give you, I know many of you are familiar with this property, but obviously located between Union Street and South 7th Street and Cherry Alley. And this is the extent of the property. Neighboring church is right here. As David was saying, there's some elements of the building. This is the 1835 original McKinstry Mansion right here. And we believe this is the 1906 addition. And then there was a mid-century addition with for bathrooms, which is right here. And there's really 4 elements, major elements. There's a lot of things that have unfortunately deteriorated or been changed on the building, but there are 4 primary elements that we think should be either removed or rehabilitated in a more appropriate manner. And that one being that mid-century addition, it's the masonry is completely different and does not relate to the original 1906 building and creates some confusion as to the historic nature of the buildings. The other is the porches that were once here were removed and replaced with a steel and concrete fire escape. Unfortunately, that escape is rusted and deteriorated to quite a degree. We'd like to remove those in their entirety. You'll see later on in the presentation, we're going to restore the main porch that was once here. There is now an apartment that sticks out on the first floor. We believe that was a dining room addition at one time for the Home for the Aged, and that's a central sort of gathering community dining space at one time that we're going to bring back in the new design. And then the large 4-story brick shaft of the elevator shaft, which really interrupted this 1835 facade. We'd like to remove that and restore this facade and celebrate it, particularly within the garden space, which you'll see later. And then lastly, the original front porch was removed and also replaced with a steel and concrete facade, very sort of thin architecture with all of the original ornamentation was lost, and it was also in not a great state of affairs. The other thing is, for convenience, they added a side stair here onto South 7th Street, which really is in conflict with the main primary historic front entrance, which was this main front stair here. So we're going to completely remove these and then rebuild them to be more representative of the original historic porch and front entry stair. The other real important feature is the green space and gardens that were there and still are somewhat inexistent today. You can see remnants of it if you go by there along Union Street. There are 2 large trees here and here that are in good shape that we would like to try to save. So a big part of our building geometry and orientation with the addition was to create a courtyard and celebrate these gardens. As David was saying, we want to restore and preserve this green space to the greatest extent possible. So with that, I'll take a quick detour and introduce Dale Schaefer, who's our landscape architect. He's going to talk about our landscape plan and how that dictated the orientation and geometry of the new addition.
Hi, my name is Dale Schaefer. I'm a partner at Wagner Hodgson here in Hudson. We're really excited to be part of David's kind of vision of bringing this property back to life again. For this project, there's been, we've made an attempt to kind of develop a landscape narrative that was probable for the Krinsky Mansion, which unfortunately there's not really any clear documentation about the landscape other than what we kind of see in the historic photos, which don't really show a whole lot of the landscape. So what we did is we kind of created a story that expresses what might have been something similar to this historic house. But like the beginning of the front entry of the building, which is very formal and symmetrical, most likely would have had a formal garden of sorts, which we're recreating at the front entry. That is a vestige of that potential earlier garden. And I think a fair assumption would be that the landscape to the west of there was either a series of terrace garden rooms or a large open lawn that the McCrinskys were able to sort of entertain and sit and relax under the shade of large canopy trees. And the two trees that Mike mentioned are sort of those two there. And we're trying to incorporate them into this landscape that would provide sort of shelter and sort of intimacy, and also help screen the addition of the hotel. So we took the narrative to create these spaces. At first, we briefly looked at creating a typical hotel drop-off on Circular Drive, but that might be typical for a hotel. But what that did was he essentially destroyed any of the landscape that might be in front of this building. And although a circular drive might be appropriate for a house of this stature in the country, it wouldn't have been likely on an urban lot on the corner of a street like this in Hudson. So we went back to trying to create the narrative of what the landscape might have been like. And so what the landscape that you're looking at on this plan is sort of broken up into 3 zones. Sort of the formal entry garden on the east end of the project. And this garden will be provided with color throughout the seasons, and we'll probably bring back a couple of small ornamental trees that we've seen in some of the historic photographs that are sort of closer to the sidewalk. And then the terraces that are these paved areas providing historic character in the materiality, and also being that they provide outdoor seating, they provide small seating areas for the fire pit and for the spa. And then the third zone is this larger open lawn, park-like lawn that creates an east-west axis from the formal garden to the east, all the way down to this kind of hammock grove we've created on the west side, which is an intimate garden that's sort of secluded, that's highly planted. And then there's perimeter seating around this open lawn for informal seating. And around the perimeter along the sidewalk are these low shrub plantings that kind of give a vestige of sort of a hint back to the perimeter picket fencing that you'll see in some of the historic photographs that are going to follow. And but this is a way of kind of providing a greener edge and giving a sense that's more inviting into the landscape and into the property of the hotel. So the intent is to keep all of the activity, the social activity of the program up closer to the building, so that everything that's along Union Street is more garden and park-like, so that the activity would not be along the street.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Dale.
Back to Mike.
So just, we were able to dig up some historic photos. I'm sure you've seen some of these. But here are some of to illustrate some of the things that we're talking about. The picket fence that we would like to replace with greenery or some bushes, make it a little more transparent and inviting to the public, but still define that edge. And then the historic porch that was here that we'd like to bring back in the new design. And you'll see that partially inside and partially outside, with the still keeping a sort of dining central gathering spot within the building here. And then the main front porch, you can see that there was a lot more ornamentation here. a decent sized frieze, and entablature. And then the columns were a little thicker. They had some detail to them. And there was no side stair at all. And there was a prominent central front stair. And then lastly, there was no stone wall here. This was actually open to the level below. The mansion is really on a raised up sort of half level plinth. And the lower level or basement level was occupied and finished. It was, looks like service quarters and maybe an older kitchen at one time that we're going to utilize. So we'd like to open that up, bring some light back down to that lower level, and celebrate that sort of secondary entrance into that level, which happens off the side here. To look at what the building is today, you know, it's relatively good shape considering, but you know, a lot of the historic elements, unfortunately, porch elements would seem to be the first things that go with these older buildings, particularly in the 1800s vintage. As you can see with the porches today, this is just a tiny steel pole column with a little concrete deck. It's stone steps with the side stair here. And you can get a front angle view of that here. The windows are not original to the building, and unfortunately were then covered with a storm window, which really covers up a lot of the interesting muntin pattern or mullion pattern that you would expect to see on a historic building with, you know, proper depth, shadow depth to the windows. These are the fire escapes that were built. I'm kind of zooming in on them, looking from the garden, and then that one-story addition, which we think was originally a dining room, is now become an apartment. This is really looking farther west on Union Street, looking back into those gardens. That's one of the trees that we're trying to save with the new design, really preserve this green space as best we can with the orientation of the new addition. And then lastly, this is sort of looking down Cherry Alley. It's kind of a solid block with the plinth, and we're going to be trying to relate to that facade, but not copy it in any way. So just a quick look inside. The entire inside has been largely gutted and cleaned out, kind of exposed down to the studs in many areas. The fireplaces have been restored, most of them, which is good. And there are a fair amount of existing historic fireplace surrounds that are intact. In the main historic core of the building in the 1835 addition, the window casing and trim is in decent shape, so we feel we can restore and replace in areas as needed. And then this is that lower level I was talking about. It's really kind of a nice space that we're looking to convert to the bar lounge. So just give you a quick overview of the geometry and the floor plan. In the new addition, there will be a basement level. There's almost a little over a half-story drop in grade from South 7th Street over to the western edge of Union Street. As that grade drops, we can put in a full basement level, which will be needed for mechanicals of the new building, but also there'll be some amenity spaces down there, a small spa with a few treatment rooms, a gym, and a couple of meeting rooms. And the rest will all be mechanical storage. Moving up to the main ground level, and this is the level that's really even with the garden level. And remember, the main McKinstry Mansion is a half level up from this level. So it's a little bit confusing when you say ground level and first floor, but ground level is what we're calling even with the garden level. And so that lower area would be the bar lounge with some additional seating, public restrooms, your main dining room here. The back would be kitchen and storage space. Your main entrance to the facility would be here, with maintaining this historic entrance for public events. You'll see on the level up, I'll talk about that. So this is a level down from this historic porch entrance. This would be lobby, reception, and then there's some guest rooms in the back. And these guest rooms open up on the little patio and garden terraces that relate to Dale's landscape plan. Moving to the first floor, which is now what we are calling the historic entry level. These are the real historic spaces which will be renovated. The existing stair, there are traces of what that original stair orientation is. It's pieces of it are intact, so that will be restored along with the main parlor, which was here. And we really see this as being a kind of a flex meeting, social area, concierge space for all of the guests in the hotel.
Like the living room.
Correct. It'd be like the central living room of the hotel, central reading room here, and a little cafe space where people could get snacks or tea or cookies in the afternoon. So this will really have a historic feel to it. In the back, we have guest rooms in the 1906 edition, and then obviously guest rooms in the main level of the new edition. We're doing a lot to really create relief and depth in this facade with these balconies. Like some are an extension to the footprint, and then others are a recessive with partial extension or a Juliet balcony, and I'll show you that as we get into the exterior drawings and renderings. And then as you move up in the building, more guest rooms, there are some balcony spaces, a green roof. And then lastly, which was sort of the attic, or what we think was maybe servants' quarters at one time, will be 4 unique guest rooms with vaulted ceilings, angled ceilings. So that gives you kind of an orientation of the building and what's in it. Looking to the exterior now, this is the top elevation is Cherry Alley, the lower elevation being Union Street. This is really sort of a solid massing with a plinth, and we are looking to relate to that with the new addition, move the back of the building so it's not totally even with it. It's just a bit inside. This building actually just touches over the property line, is an existing condition. So we're making sure that the new building is within, clearly within the property. There's a mechanical court that will be hidden up top within the roof geometry and with a roof screen. And then we're providing on both sides what we're calling a glass gasket, so that we really clearly differentiate between old and new, that this is clearly the original historic building, 1835 and 1906. That mid 20th century piece has been removed. Just zooming in a little bit on these materials. You can see we're looking to bring back the original porch and ornamentation of the porch, and we've sized the proportions and scale of that based on the historic photos that we're able to find. You can see that's the opening now below there's a door to the lower level bar lounge with a side entrance, direct entrance from the exterior, and another path of egress from that lounge. The windows would be replaced with new windows and energy efficient, and where the muntin pattern can be completely exposed. Trim fascias would be restored. The roof would be patched and repaired to conform to what the existing faux slate is now. New dining area and restaurant here, because the ceiling heights are very low on that lower level space, we're doing a 2-story dining room with a very thin sort of glass facade. We're doing that so that the existing historic facade beyond can be highlighted and act as a feature, a backdrop to the dining room. The porches will be restored. One inside here, which would be within the dining room, and act as an upper dining terrace. And then there's the uppermost level would be a private balcony for these guest rooms in the future. Main entrance to the hotel here with a little canopy. We're looking at maybe putting the signage here. These are cut letters on top of the canopy that would be lit. And then we are bringing in some of the brick material just to echo the historic building, but not copy it in any way. So for the sort of solid base of the building, when you think about buildings, they have a tendency to have a base, a body, and a head. And these buildings were very similar with a base, a body, and a head. So we're playing off of that, but we were really paid a lot of attention. We felt it was important to keep the primary roof height and geometry scale significantly lower than the primary building so that it would step down with the landscape. There's a small L return here with the Juliet balconies. And we've chosen a dark charcoal color with black trim to create a recessive element to any of the new buildings that are going to be attached to the historic building, so that they would be recessive, both in color and in geometry. The exterior materials will be a combination of cedar siding, hardy board, and metal trim and fascia. And then the roof we're proposing as a charcoal standing seam roof, metal. So going to the other facades, you can see this is the South 7th Street. This is really a restoration project. We're really minimally touching that, just replacement of windows, and then fixing fascia, trim, flashing, and patching and repairing the roof as necessary. Big change would be the new porch, the new main stair. And then this is the facade that's facing the church. And with the metal trim and Juliet balconies, horizontal clapboard siding, and then using brick down close to the ground to create that plinth again. So what might this look like as a real three-dimensional rendering? This is standing in the middle, just off the edge of the dining terrace in the middle of Dale's Landscape, looking back at the main entrance. You can see this would be the 2-story dining space restaurant with that porch being restored inside, acting as an upper dining terrace. The upper level of the porch is, you can't see from this perspective, but it's up here with a green roof above and some exterior balconies. And then the main building is set back from this facade quite a distance from the historic main facade. You can see the elevator tower has been removed, which was right here. And these openings will be restored and brought back. And we're creating some real interesting relief in the new building. We feel that that should have more of a modern feel or a modern interpretation of some of the scale and proportions that exist in the historic buildings, but these are some large shed dormers that come out to create some real interesting relief and shadow on the facade. And then we're incorporating some natural cedar material as an accent, both inside the rooms and on the exterior balconies. We're looking to use that as a ceiling material in the main dining area as well, which will be lit up at night to create some warmth in the building. Zooming back now, this is as if you're standing on the sidewalk on Union Street, looking at the main facade and the new porch. And you can see how the grade really changes from this side all the way down to over here. It continues to drop. So there'd be a series of small steps, terraces. This is the one primary green space, and the next second larger green space is over here. This is that existing mature tree that we're trying to save. And you can see one of the things that from our research and some of the historic photos, it looks like the trim, fascia trim and porch might have been painted a sandstone color to match the sills and lintels of the masonry openings. It was sort of a popular thing to do in the 19th century, was to sort of make that feel like sandstone as well. So we think that might be an appropriate color to bring in to the existing building. And this is walking up to the corner of South 7th Street and Union, looking back at really the entire composition. Again, having the McKinstry Mansion facade still being the prominent building with the 1906 addition, and then the new guest room addition being a little recessive. And then the one mature tree, second mature tree, which really will define this garden space. Like Dale was saying, we're trying to create this as a very public zone with some openings and some transparency that can happen. Instead of that side stair coming straight down here, we just shift a walkway over, so you still have a nice connection on South 7th Street that would bring you right across into the front of the stair.
And it actually goes further to the dining terrace as well. That's
Right, and that pathway cuts all the way down into some steps and then onto the dining terrace. And then lastly, this is just standing in the middle of the green space, looking at the new addition and how what's happening three-dimensionally. We're creating some relief on the building, particularly with these 3 large dormers with exterior balconies, and then some Juliet balconies off the edge here. And then keeping a rhythm of punch-out windows that relates to the historic building but does not copy it in any way. So that's the end of our architectural presentation. I guess I would pause there to answer any questions and get into the details with you.
Thank you very much. Commissioners?
What's the time frame for this project?
We hope to break ground, you know, by hopefully by the end of the year, December, January, if not sooner.
Well, I mean, I'm one voice, but I think this is stunning and a beautiful tribute to Hudson, to architecture, and to this building.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, who said that? Was that John?
Yes, that is I.
Nice to meet you electronically.
Just a quick administrative matter for the record. Commissioner Schwartz has recused himself, and I understand why. But this is we've seen very few applications, at least in my whatever 8 years, where the integration of intent and the landscaping and what you're building are as well connected. I think pretty nice.
Thank you.
I have a great team. I'm thrilled to be working with Dale and Mike and Chad at Taconic. You know, we have a great team of consultants that really heard what we were trying to do and did a great job.
I think it's really a wonderful effort. the overall massing of the design of the new work is perfectly appropriate in scale. You've really taken advantage of the site in a wonderful way to honor the original building. The garden is, you're to be so commended for your vision of the garden as an important and integral feature to this building. It's a huge, it will be, of course, a huge asset for your development, and but what a great what a great benefit for the community. I really think it's wonderful, and you're all to be commended for great vision and great execution.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners, unless there are further comments, we could entertain a motion to find the application complete and waive a public hearing. Is
I make
there?
a motion.
Go ahead, Sharon.
I just want to add one comment to what everyone else has said. I think it's really beautiful, and I particularly appreciate the way that you've differentiated the new portion from the old and not tried to build something that's a fake version of the old, but that references the key architectural elements of it. So I think that's really, it's worth putting on the record, because it's an example of how we can have both new and old side by side in Hudson.
It is, Miranda. It's a benchmark for us.
Yeah.
So I do want to ask, given the size of the project, if the commission wants to hold a hearing or waive it.
I have a question that is somewhat parallel with that, Victoria. Thank you. These drawings are design drawings. They're not construction drawings. They're not instructions that the building official will use in reviewing the actual construction. So in terms of our process, we have design intent documents before us. Of course, more detailed plans and specifications will be prepared. I just wonder what our process should be in terms of, first, of course, we want to support the applicant and the team, because they've done a wonderful job. But I wonder if we have in our procedure a way to approve this in concept, to have review of the final plans and specifications once they are complete and become part of the chain of instruction that goes through to our building official and for implementation.
You're talking about the actual window, the specifications of the windows, the specifications of the trim, and all of those details.
Correct.
So the board today could certainly give it, I mean, we could all comment and give the applicant a level of comfort as to the proposal, but they will have to return regarding those specific details.
I also would,
saying
I
that's
would
an
also
option?
react to Victoria's comment that it does merit a public hearing, right? It is a very large new building in a very prominent space attached to one of our most important pieces of history. So I don't, even if we were unanimous, we've taken that approach many times before when something this large and transformational occurs, even if we think that even if we believe that the transformation is 100% positive.
Well, I mean, the way the code is written is that you may waive public hearings when you deem something minor.
Right. No, I think Victoria raises a great point that this is a major piece of construction in the city, and we should give the public a chance to comment on it.
Anyone else?
I agree.
Okay, so no problem. I think at this point then what we should do is simply move forward with that. If the applicant is prepared, I think our next meeting is what, the 8th of June or somewhere around there?
12th, I think.
12th of June.
Do you
Uh,
want more detailed information?
I think for the public hearing, I mean, there are two levels of information. For the public hearing, this tells the story in terms of a significant structure of a certain design quality and intent and how it occupies the space and how it relates to the street and the street experience for Hudsonians. I don't think that we need more detailed drawings for purposes of the public hearing. The point's well taken that we will need those for code enforcement going forward. To the applicant, at the next level of detail, what would be your time frame if we ask for greater specification?
You know, I think we could probably get that ready close to the 12th or on or before. A lot of the materials are labeled on the elevations. I think maybe you would need maybe more like a cut sheet on the windows, and I don't know if any other specific things that you would want. Obviously, we can't get all the way through construction drawings without approval from the boards because it's a little cart before the horse. So, but I think we can, anything that's not labeled, or if you need a cut sheet or any detailed specification on something, we'd be happy to give that to you.
Okay. Then my suggestion is that for the 12th June, that we could open with public hearing, and we could, after we've heard from the public and received public comment, assuming that that's positive, I suspect it will be, we'll see what happens, that we can then vote on that date. If you have those specifications, to find the application complete, and possibly vote to approve the application, which would take us to the next meeting for a certificate of appropriateness. If the applicant can accommodate both things, I think we could do that in June.
So, can anybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
This is Craig. Sorry to interrupt, if you don't mind, Mr.
Not
Chairman.
at all.
Just to kind of reflect back to what Chip was talking about.
Yep.
So everybody on the board, and I know, most of you may know this, when we receive the plans that are submitted for any board, we review them based on, obviously, all the codes that we enforce. When it goes to the boards, and whatever board it is, in this particular case, historic, whatever you approve, when the applicant submits their construction documents, the exterior of the property has to be identical to what was approved. And I do that review and inspections. If it doesn't match to what you folks approved, then we stop everything and they come back to you. If that makes it a little bit more streamlined so you understand what we're talking about. If there's a specific sheet or like a cut sheet of something that you're requiring, then we will make sure that is submitted prior to them moving forward past any point of approval.
Okay.
Is that okay?
I think so. I'm just concerned. I'm not trying to rush the applicant into a level of specificity that they're not ready to deal with yet.
Yeah, I'm concerned with that as well, Phil. I think if it's all right, could we go to the public hearing and then maybe at the next meeting give you that level of specificity?
That would be my recommendation, that let us go ahead with the public hearing. This is a high impact event for Hudson, and give you another 2 weeks beyond that to go to another level of specificity. That it just makes no sense to push it on this.
Okay.
Okay.
No problem.
Okay. So Now I'm puzzled myself. I guess we're not even saying that we're finding the application complete because it requires the specs. Does it I think it makes sense to go forward with the public hearing. I'd love to get that out of the way, and I don't think that the public needs detailed drawings for that purpose. They will understand the project because it's very well described. Victoria,
Well,
you got a view?
Can you folks identify for me what it is that still needs to be provided as far as details? It's window specifications, light details. I mean, if you could just create a list, we can get an idea of how complete or not the application is.
Well, Victoria, I think that the point that I was trying to make earlier is that there will be a detailed set of construction documents that will be reviewed by Craig. That will show all of the structure and all of the materials and all of the very, very fine details of the trim and the and the exterior finishes that become Craig's it becomes Craig's vehicle to implement our board's decision. We don't have those documents yet. I think it's really, I understand the problem for the owner and moving it forward. I think our board just simply hasn't historically had a process by which we can approve a design and concept and then have an additional review at additional detail for final details. I'm open. I'm not proposing anything here. I'm just outlining that legally our board and Craig have a process that we go through that needs to be integrated into what is really a project of substantial size that boards have really not dealt with much. I'm only raising that question.
I think it needs to be a two-step process. I think that we should give the applicant and the owner specific enough time to work with us. They can check in if need be with Craig or with Chip on the level of specificity. But I would love to get the public hearing out of the way.
Right.
If the commission is comfortable with that.
I'm very comfortable with the public hearing, and I believe that the presentation, that materials that were in place today are perfectly adequate for the public hearing, as has been said. So I'm just wanting of us to have a vehicle to track the details as they go to the final construction documents.
Done and dusted. I think everybody's in agreement, and I think Craig would not want us to go forward without that. So we want.
Hi, Phil.
Yeah.
This is Andy Didio with Taconic Engineering. Part of our design in moving forward.
Hello?
Andy is kind of frozen up.
Is kind of massing out the building. Finney's done an excellent job. I'm wondering.
Andy, we can't hear you. Do you want to try to call in on the telephone? You're going in and out.
If I could just pick up from Andy's point, I think there's a good deal of specificity between the application documents A201 and A200. So if that may be a point where Chip starts taking a look at those points, and there's a lot of material call outs in those areas as an initial basis.
Sure.
Because this project is so big, you know, let's start going through the process. One thing that we can do is when we get to the C of A, if there are any items that you need more specificity on, we can say this C of A is limited to X, Y, and Z. Applicant shall return to the board with the following information. So, you know, maybe you agree to the massing and size of the building, and then we move on with more details at a later date. So there's some flexibility that we can build in.
That's perfect.
Like we approve the massing, we approve the windows and the roof line, but you're going to come back on the materials for the addition, for example.
I mean, yeah, it's not ideal and it's not the normal course of business, but this project is so much bigger than the usual project that we review. So
But it is a good idea. It does respond to the natural flow that the architect and landscape architect and the owner are going to go through in developing those additional details. So we don't want to encumber that. We don't want to take that out of its natural cycle. Obviously, you've done a fantastic job at design. You have a great deal more work to do relative to the construction documents and so forth. I don't think we're not trying to add a layer of complication to that. We're just trying to recognize that this is a process. The concept of us approving this project in its basic design, in its massing, in its scale, and beginning to itemize some things to follow up, as Victoria has suggested, if that works for the owner and the architects, I think that could work for us.
We would really appreciate that effort, and that would work very well for the applicant.
It would, because then it would give us the time to go through that process of the material selection and not have a gun to our head.
but is the rest of the board comfortable with this approach?
Absolutely. I think that our initial approval has to do, as everyone's been saying, with the massing and the scale and the basic design, the use of glass and stone and siding as it's been proposed. And then, but because of the scale of the project, it makes sense to check in 1 or 2 times more later in the process to make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of how what the project is.
Okay.
Okay.
Chairman?
I'm here. Where is we?
We were talking about the possibility of issuing multiple C of As for the project. Each one with conditions. So the first one might say it's approved for massing and scale, but the applicant must return for additional details on windows and trim size and porch railings, you know, whatever it is that is so technical that they can't get to it before they need the big pieces. But it's an option. It's up to the board.
I have no problem with that, or however people proceed. I'd love to move this forward. If the commission is comfortable with that as a concept, to find the application complete in the sense of massing, scale, overall design, how the land and the building are distributed and relate to one another, all that good stuff, then we can go ahead and find it complete in those terms. We'll find the language around that. We can also approve it in those terms and only in those terms, and we can go ahead with a public hearing on in the June meeting.
We could approve the design development drawings or the design presentation drawings as presented.
Yeah,
we have those documents we all have seen and agree upon. Yeah. Our approval can be geared to that.
Right, but we still need to identify specifically what they need to come back for, so that when Craig and I need to understand what the board approved and what you still need to see moving forward.
Okay.
But we shouldn't approve until after the public hearing, right? I mean, isn't the purpose of the public hearing to get the input?
Correct.
Right.
We
I mean,
can move this forward, and we can also find the application complete only in the terms described very broadly.
Yes.
I respect everyone's desire to go to a public hearing, and we're ready, willing, and able to do so in the June meeting. Want to also point out that we're going to a public hearing for, city planning as well as IDA as well. So there's going to be plenty of to comment.
Public.
I know, but I mean, usually well, it probably feels like overlap from the applicant point of view. I'm sure it does, but usually we can keep the discussion focused on what each of our own territories cover.
Right.
Okay. Very good.
Yep.
And frankly, I think that HPC would be fairly well criticized if we did not have a public hearing in this case.
Understood.
Okay, we need to construct a motion to find the application complete in the terms of concept, scaling, mass, relationship,
Design.
and design. Could someone make a motion, or did I just do that? Miranda,
So moved.
and I will second. All in favor, say A.
Aye.
Please note that 2 votes are absent. Philip Schwartz is recused, and Hugh Biber was not part of the commission meeting today. But we have, oh hell, I should probably do a little bit of a roll call just to be sure. I'm sure we're okay though. Barrett.
Aye.
Barry.
Aye.
Cole.
Aye.
Schobel. John
Aye.
Schobel.
I'm here.
Foreman, aye. Done. And that's done. And then I guess we need a second motion to schedule a public hearing, first meeting in June. I will make that motion.
Wait, you need a time.
I believe it's, what did we say, June 12th?
Yeah.
Oh, I
That's
see.
the date.
Time of day?
Yes.
Oh, hell, 9 o'clock was a little fierce for me this morning.
9:30.
Thank you.
9:30.
I much appreciate that. I make that motion that we schedule meeting, public hearing 9:30 on the 12th of June. Someone please second.
I second.
All in favor, aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried. We'll have a public hearing. And cool work, you all.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you
Beautiful.
very much for great work.
We look forward to working with you all.
We
Thank
too.
you. Thank you all
Thank
very
you.
much. Wonderful project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One more, one administrative issue. City attorney pointed out that while we were in our public hearing, there were a bunch of comments that pop through on text or whatever the vehicle is. I just want to confirm for the minutes that those comments will be included in the record. And our next application should be 538 Warren Street. Is anyone here representing 538 Warren?
Hi, this is
Sorry.
oh. This is Jesse Goldvarg with Barla Swedlick Architects. I'll be presenting for 538 Warren.
Oh, terrific. Thank you so much for joining us electronically today.
Yes, no problem at all. And my colleagues Doug and Christine are also listening in here too.
Morning.
I wasn't sure if you wanted to pull up the application, or I'm happy to share my screen as well.
If you want to go ahead and share, because it gives you control over what pages you want us to look at and what sequence, so that's a good thing.
Sure. Okay, just bear with me one moment. Okay, so thank you everyone for taking the time to review our application. I'm again Jesse Goldvarg with Barla Swedlick Architects, and our application, we're applying on behalf of Marie Wong, our client, who's recently purchased 538 Warren, which is about midway on the block between 5th and 6th Street on the north side of Warren Street. And I'll pull up a photo of the existing facade. What our client's intent is that the building has been somewhat vacant over the past years. We think at one
I'm
point
in the
decades
Historic
ago, it was,
Preservation Commission meeting.
at one point years ago, it was a flower shop, but it's been generally empty for a while now. And our client is planning to convert the lower level into a wine bar. And the upper 2 levels are current apartments that are going to be renovated and rented out. So our proposal, I will go to the elevations. So this is the existing facade, and the red is indicating the areas that we're proposing work on this front facade, which include removing the existing green roof addition that was added on at some point in the last probably 60 or 70 years. The building itself dates back to the 1880s. And then the lower storefront, we think, was probably added, in the first few decades of the 20th century. And just to orient everyone, the storefront, and I'll go back to the photo, the storefront glass and entry door here would direct customers into the wine bar. And then the existing double wooden door here is separate and goes right into a stair hall that allows residents to get access into the 2nd and 3rd floor apartments. So the 2 distinct entrances we're not planning to change. And let's see, I will go back to the elevations. So our plan is to, or our proposal includes removing the roof that was added on, and also all of there's this like brick tile veneer that had been added on at a later date. And we're essentially just planning to restore the facade and uncover what is there and currently covered up, which is this leaded glass storefront. And there's a transom above the existing entrance into the commercial area, and then restore the existing and not replace, just paint and patch the existing double doors into the apartment stair hall, and uncover an existing stone lintel that's flush with the brick. And I'll pull up the photos again too. And we've done some investigation to understand that a lot of that glass and masonry is existing, in part because of the neighbor to the right has, these buildings must have been constructed around the same time, and they have an exposed leaded glass front that we've also seen through, cutting some holes inside, that ours exists. And, although the glass down here needs to be replaced, there's some cracking in it and it's not tempered for safety. Our plan is to just restore the entire metal framework. So in addition, moving upwards, we're proposing to remove the casement windows that are not original, along with the shutters, with operable historic double hung windows, which would be painted wood, and also energy efficient, so no storm windows would be required. And another little note is that the existing windows that were replaced on the second level had this sort of filler piece at the bottom. You can see better in the photos. I'm referring to this piece here. So our proposed design is to remove that piece and restore the window size to what was the historic original masonry opening size, which you can see in our proposed elevation here. And we're not planning to restore the shutters. We did locate a historic photo of that slightly captures a view of the building. This is from 1909, looking northeast. And I'll just annotate real quickly. So this white building right here is 538 Warren Street. And you can also see there's the existing punched windows that were likely there when the building was first constructed, but there's no evidence of shutters. And so, you know, we're not planning to put those back as they were added at a later date. And then let's see, moving up to the roof level, the existing entablature we're planning to keep and patch and repair and repaint to freshen it up. And the other work on the facade will just be removing some of the exposed wiring, the vines, and repainting. So let's see, and I do have a colored rendering to share that we've actually put together since the materials were first submitted. So if everyone is comfortable, I'd be happy to share that live right now. Okay. So just to give a sense, and I can even pull up the photo next to it for a sort of comparison of the existing conditions and the proposed facade renovation work. And just to point out one other item, the trim work above the glass storefront has will be painted wood trim. It only projects out about 10 inches from the brick facade. It's a slightly different configuration than the neighbor to the right. This currently doesn't exist, and you know, we'd be happy to provide more details on this, but it's about 10, will be about 10 inches deep. So I guess at this point, I'm happy to open up to any questions anyone has, and happy to provide further details.
I think it's a lovely presentation, and the work you're doing is excellent, right? I do think, you know, and you probably, if you heard the last presentation, then you would understand. I do think we need some greater specifications, and that newly constructed element would be one of those things. But otherwise, I think it looks great.
Excuse me, John, it's Phil. I think we have a quorum. I wonder if you could chair for the balance of this meeting. I need to step away.
Sure, although I only have until 12:30, so if
I think we're fine. This is the last application.
Oh, it is? Okay, then that's easy breezy. Bye, Phil.
Very well, and thank you so much, Jesse. I apologize to you. It's has nothing to do with your application. I think it's great what you're doing.
No problem. Thank you for your time.
We still have a quorum without you, right? Great.
That's correct. Philip Schwartz is back on.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Terrific. Thank you so much, everyone.
All right, well, then you heard what I think about it. Can we have other comments on the building? Or the application, rather, not the building.
I had a question about the stairs and the railing. Are those staying or being removed?
Yes, I didn't cover that in my discussion. Yes, the stoop is going, we're proposing to remove the existing stoop. I can pull up some better pictures. It's not in the best condition currently. And we are also, let's see. It's a concrete stoop with a decorative metal railing, and the shape is definitely, we're assuming it's not original, and there's this sort of tile veneer that's chipping away. And our proposal is to reorient the steps facing the street and the sidewalk so that there are two distinct and clear entrances to the public side and versus the private apartment entrance on the right.
But what are they to be made of?
It would be a concrete base with stone treads.
Mm-hmm. Chip, do you have any thoughts on that?
I do. I agree that we need additional detailing for the storefront roof. We need additional detailing for the stoop and the handrails, what they are made of and how they work. First of all, it's a wonderful project. You've saved and you're restoring a really handsome building. The removal of all of that stuff that managed to get stuck on the face of the building
Unfortunately,
60 or 70 years ago. Hallelujah is all I've got to say. I do have a question about the painting of the brick. I understand that the brick is to be painted, and it would be interesting to know what historically the brick was, how it was finished. But I'm also curious to know about the stone lintels. And the size of the stone lintel that's over the apartments, really massive. It seems like with the decorative stone lintels that are over the windows, that one would expect to see a highly decorative lintel over the apartment door, particularly because the doors are one assumes those doors are original. Is that correct?
The double doors into the apartment, yes, into the apartment
Interesting.
areas, yes.
Have you actually seen that stone lintel?
Well, so if I could just bring your attention, I'm pulling up again, the neighbor to the right was, we think, constructed just because there's a lot of similar details happening at the same time, that we've uncovered. And so we don't have exact dimensions of what our lintel is, but we're assuming it's rather close to what we see exposed here.
Right. Okay, fair enough. The lintels that are over the windows on the second and third floor, those are carved stone, is that correct? Or are they?
They are actually, we are fairly sure it's an applied wood relief that we were not planning to remove or adjust other than repaint. And they're in fine enough condition that there's no concern about further deterioration.
I'm sorry, I haven't been able to get by there to take a look at it. But you think that there's a wood veneer over a lintel?
From our view of these from the street, the decoration and relief pattern in these, we haven't seen anything similar to this at a stone on the street, but it's something that we can definitely take a closer look at and investigate to see if there's a covering that could potentially come off.
That it would be great if you could bring that information back with you with the other information that we've requested.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. It's fantastic. I love the work you're doing here is going to be a marvelous improvement. Great contribution to the street. Terrific.
Great, thank you. We're excited as well to see the transformation.
Good.
So it sounds like you're asking the applicant to return with some more information for the next meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
Do we have the option to approve the plan with contingencies to ask for those details? Would that speed the process?
Can you explain, are the contingencies, can someone give me a list of the contingencies?
I think we're talking about more detail on the materials for that roof over the commercial entrance. Chip was just asking for more detail on the lintels, the materials for the steps and the railings. Don't know what else.
Also, the commercial door is not clear what the product, what the design is that you're anticipating for that.
Yes, that this door and transom would be a new metal door in keeping with the kind of frame detailing of what's there originally or currently. And we can definitely provide more specification on that as well in our follow-up.
I mean, maybe there are enough of these details that we need to say the application isn't complete at the moment until we get those details.
I think that list is pretty long.
I mean, there is a balance, right? The way we've done this in the past is if it was something that we were waiting for a specification or a drawing, you know, some percentage of it that we would approve as with the contingency. But I think that could also be part of the vote. So we can decide that through a vote if we would want to approve this with contingencies or if we don't. Does any other members have an opinion on whether you would approve it with those contingencies or whether we need to see more and deem this application incomplete?
Is there a time frame issue?
Contingencies?
That's a great question.
I mean, I think we're all enthusiastic about the basic project, and it's clear that the applicant is intending to restore the building in a way that we're all happy with. So I think even though there are a number of details that we need to know before we could finally approve it, I would be comfortable approving it with contingencies just to speed the process for the applicant.
Paul, how do you feel?
That's my opinion.
I agree. No, I agree with that.
Philip?
I agree with that.
Chip, are you passionate either way?
No, I agree with the concept of approval based on additional information.
And which we've defined so that they can be in the minutes and Victoria can have those, right?
Right. So this is information that needs to be provided prior to the next meeting because there's too many open pieces to make it a condition of the C of A.
That's great.
But as long as they provide it prior to the next meeting for your review, then you'll move forward with voting on a C of A.
Jesse, does that seem reasonable?
Yes, that sounds perfectly adequate and fair, and we appreciate we appreciate even, you know, the verbal the verbal enthusiasm for the project. And
Fantastic. You guys are very sensitive, we can tell. Can I have a motion to approve, to deem the application complete with the contingencies we've described?
I make that motion.
Thanks, Paul, and Miranda seconds it. That's great.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. So that's passed. And can we have a motion to instruct the city attorney to issue a certificate of appropriateness with the assumption that we receive the drawings, all the outstanding items prior to next meeting so that we can review them in advance of the meeting?
I make that motion.
Thanks, Paul. Miranda,
I'll
thank you
second
for the
it.
second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, Victoria.
thank you
cool
very
with that?
much. Yes.
Okay, great. So I think, hey, Jesse, good luck and thank you so much. We're really
Thank
excited.
you. Thank you. Appreciate everyone's time
Beautiful.
today.
Beautiful building restored to its proper state. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
And then with that, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting unless there's any other new business?
Nope.
Motion.
I make a motion.
Thank you, Paul. Miranda second, all in favor, aye. Thank you.
Aye.
all. Great to see you. Have a wonderful holiday. I hope you
Yes.
You too. All righty. Bye-bye, everyone.
Be well. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you.